All right, we're jumping right into a text today that poses some really big, huge questions. Like, what if the whole idea of profit is just the math of selfishness? And what if, stay with me here, we all actually share the exact same soul? It's a fascinating, kind of radical way to look at everything from capitalism to who we are. So let's dive in and unpack this. So the whole thing kicks off with this really powerful, personal line. It just cuts right through all the usual labels we use, gender, identity, and points to something deeper, right? Something more fundamental at our core. And believe me, this is just setting the stage for a much, much bigger idea. And that leads us to the big question, the one we're really going to explore. This text makes a bold claim that underneath it all, we're all connected, sharing the same soul. Think about that for a second. If that's true, what does that actually mean for everything? How we live, how we build our societies, how we treat one another? Let's see what it has to say. Okay, so before we can even get to the solution, we've got to understand the problem as this text sees it. And that brings us to Act 1, a critique of the world we live in now, a system that it argues is basically built on all of us working against each other. So check out this distinction it makes. It's pretty stark. The text says our system basically forces us into one of two roles. On one side, you've got the competitor, and their whole deal is you kind of have to wish ill on others to get ahead. It's a zero-sum game. But the alternative is the collaborator. Their goal isn't just to win, it's to lift everyone else up with them. We're talking about a completely different mindset, a totally different intention. So, what's the engine driving all this competition? Well, according to this text, it all boils down to one single powerful idea: profit. And the definition of profit here is incredibly simple and honestly kind of chilling when you think about it. Profit is just this: to give less than you take. That's it. So in this view, it's not about creating value for everyone. It's fundamentally about an unbalanced exchange. To make a profit, you have to make sure you're getting more out of the deal than the other person. And this idea doesn't just stop there. It ripples out. Take marketing, for instance. The source calls it a form of legal scamming. Whoa. The argument is that its whole purpose isn't really to inform you, but to manipulate how you see value, right? To get you to agree to that unbalanced deal where you end up giving more than you actually receive. Okay, and to show the scale of all this, the text does a little back-of-the-napkin math. If you took all the wealth in the world and divided it equally among every single person, everyone will get something like $57,000. Now, the point isn't whether that number is perfect. The point it's making is that the issue isn't that there's not enough to go around. The problem is how it's all divvied up. And here's the kicker. This is where that math gets a moral dimension. The claim is, for every single person who manages to hoard $1 million, the math dictates that about 18 other people have to go without their fair share. They're forced to, in the text's words, morally starve or just fight each other for the scraps. Okay, so if that's the system, you have to wonder, how does it keep going? How does this stuff get passed down from generation to generation? Well, that brings us to Act 2, and a hidden mechanism the text calls social replication. The core idea here is something the source calls mirror neurons. Now, it's being used here as a really powerful way to think about social learning. The idea is simple. We're basically wired to unconsciously copy what we see around us. And that's not just the good stuff. It's also all the negative behaviors that we see, that we put up with, or that we just don't actively try to change. And here's a perfect example of how that chain reaction works. The text lays it out like this. You start with a culture that's big on punishment. Think prisons and a tough-on-crime attitude. Well, that trickles down. Parents feel like they have to push their kids hard to make it in this tough world. And what happens next? Those kids take that lesson to school and replicate it, pushing around kids they see as weaker. It's a domino effect. One behavior just leads to the next. All right, so that's the problem. A competitive system that spreads through social copying. Pretty bleak, right? So what's the way out? This is Act 3. And according to this text, the solution starts with a completely radical shift in how we see ourselves and each other, moving away from separation and toward interconnection. And the solution really hinges on this one powerful idea. We are one. That's it. The source suggests the only reason we can't see this, the only reason it doesn't feel true, is because of fear. Fear is like a wall blocking us off from really understanding who we truly are. So, to get to that core truth, we apparently have to start tearing down the ideas that keep us divided. And the text uses masculinity as a prime example. It reframes it completely, saying it's not some inherent quality you're born with. No, it's just ego. It's a mask we wear to hide our fears and insecurities. And it's a mask that keeps us feeling separate from everyone else. Okay, so if we're going to make this kind of massive shift in how we see the world, it follows that we need a new way of understanding truth itself. The source is basically arguing that our whole foundation for what we consider to be true, it needs a complete overhaul. And here's another really interesting distinction it makes. There's a revelation of truth, which is a truth that connects things, that builds on everything that came before it. It's inclusive. But then there's a religion of truth. And that's when a truth becomes rigid, like a dogma. It becomes a new ruler, a new way to create separation. And the text argues that kind of truth just ends up feeding the old competitive system all over again. So this all leads to a brand new definition of what truth even is. According to the source, for something to be truly true, it has to pass two tests. First, it's got to be logically sound. It has to make sense. But second, and this is the big one, when people copy it, when those mirror neurons kick in, it has to create the most uplifting, positive result for everyone. So to put it simply, a truth is only really true if it makes the world a better place for all of us. So where does that leave us? Well, it all comes together in a kind of roadmap for the future. It's about combining transparency with this idea of logic is love. It's about actively choosing to think about what will uplift everybody. It's about trying to live in that shared truth that I am you and you are me. And it's about remembering that everything we do, every little action, has a ripple effect that touches everyone. And that brings us to a really challenging question that the text poses directly. Let me ask you this. Is it ever okay to go with a logic that doesn't think about everyone, that isn't designed to lift us all up equally and consistently? Or is that the exact moment, the very instant, we give up on unconditional love? And we're going to end on this final thought, because after all that big picture societal stuff, this quote brings it right back home, right back to you and me. The ultimate challenge, it seems, is to be able to look at others, even the parts of them that are hard to look at, their ugliest self-reflection, and see yourself. Because if we really are all one, then loving them, truly understanding them, is the only way we can ever really love and understand ourselves. Definitely a provocative idea to leave you with.